And we are live yet again, and this is my second author's chat of the week, and I'm going to keep my eye out and for the opportunity to invite him to the chat when he jumps on. And it's kind of been kind of neat. I literally was almost real late because I got a message. I communicate with one of my audiobook narrators who's in Europe, and he just sent me some files just saying that in the next few days I should be getting a lot of the chapters sent and ready for me to listen to in preparation for the new audiobook. So that's really kind of neat for me. I'm excited about doing that. I get to now listen to what he's read and figure out, let me send this invite, see if he sees that, figure out for sale purposes and all that kind of fun behind the scenes. Hello?
Hello. Doesn't
I
look
hear
like
you.
my camera's on, is it?
I hear you, but I do not see you at this moment. And I don't know why. This happens almost every time at this point. There you go. You figured it
Yeah,
out. Hello.
looked like it turned off by default. I think this is actually my first time going live on TikTok, believe it or
What?
not.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, I do not believe that. I feel like you had to have done something at some point because I see all your posts all the time.
Yeah, I've been on a few different podcasts. I've been on a live YouTube podcast, but I don't think I've actually been on a live yet on TikTok. So, or I think
Well,
I joined one briefly, but this is like my first official live scheduled one.
fun. Well, I'm glad you're here. And I actually saw that someone just chimed in right when you were joining. So what I'll do is let you, because I always do this anyways, let you introduce yourself, what you write, your book, and I'll kind of do the same, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay. So my name's Casey Sutton. I wore my cool book shirt today. I'm the
Yay!
author
I
of
love it.
I'm the author of Malthus Necromancer Unchained. I am a huge Dungeons and Dragons nerd, and I also like dark fantasy. And I loved reading a lot of the YA D&D novels as a kid, like Drizzt. I guess that's not technically YA, but definitely not grim darkish adult. And so I wanted a adult grim dark Dungeons and Dragonsy novel with
Yes.
morally gray main characters. So I came up with a necromancer named Malthus.
Oh, I love that. And that's perfect for a couple of things I did want to bring up in a little bit. And I see already we have some comments about had me at D&D already hooked. So there you go.
Awesome.
But for me, for anybody who's chiming in and doesn't know, I'm an epic fantasy author. My name is Katharine Wibell, and I write various fantasy series ranging from YA, new adult, to adult literature. And they also vary from the noble bright fantasy questing side of things, a little more Tolkien-esque, all the way to the more grimdark side of dark fantasy, kind of like yourself. So it's a lot of fun to incorporate that. And I have noticed as I'm reading some of the comments, I have noticed a lot of people who like D&D or other styles of fantasy outside of literature have a huge overlap with what they read, if they read and what they read. And so I love meeting authors who share that because you're saying you were inspired by D&D, my young adult series. So it wasn't inspired by D&D. I moved them all in the other room because I was painting them, but because I ran a Kickstarter for the third one that I released in the beginning of the year, one of the things that I offered for the Kickstarter was custom made TTRPG miniatures
Oh,
with
that's cool.
of the main character and had a special subclass and all that. Because again, I think people who enjoy one more often than not, I could see enjoying the other. So I think that is really neat.
That is cool. Someone actually messaged me one time before Malthus fully published and came out, and wanted my permission, which of course I gave them, to play Malthus as a character in their Dungeons and Dragons
Yes.
campaign.
See, now you need to come up with a little character or some kind of information where you can like give it out to your fans and being like, now here's a little information you can utilize to play the. I think that is such a fun idea. And I
Yeah.
actually talked with an author last week, and he helped run a campaign of his characters for
Huh.
people to watch, and they live streamed it. I don't know if it was on this platform or YouTube, but then readers could watch them play the character. I think it was kind of very meta.
That is cool. I mean, okay, so that gave me a couple things to say. So one, I think that would be an awesome idea, especially as like he gets stronger throughout the book series. Maybe I can go back and at the end of each book have like a character sheet of like where he would be at now. That would be kind of neat.
Ooh, that would
Um,
be a lot of fun.
but then I was also on this podcast recently called Spooky Mission Podcast, and they do all kinds of really cool stuff. I won't spend too much time talking about all that, but they do live Dungeons and Dragons sessions, and I got invited to be like a stand-in character for one or two sessions here coming up.
That's cool. I love
Yeah.
that. And I see a comment that chimed in saying, working on just beginning a sci-fi book. Well, good. Continue the process. It is a long process, but it is worthwhile in the end. At least that's my opinion. When you finally get a hold of your book, it's so cool. And you released Malthus not that long ago.
Yeah, it came out. I've been working on it for a couple years, but yeah, I published it officially on June 28th this year.
Wow. Yes, it was. Okay. The year is blurring by, but I do remember seeing your release post and everything. So I was like, I feel like it just happened.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
not very long ago at all. And I'm actually really surprised it's been out for, so since June 28th, and I'm at 99 reviews on Amazon and still at
that
four
is
and a half
great.
stars. So I am really excited about that.
I love that. Now, what made you choose a necromancer? Because as your main character, because you more often than not, if I'm correct, people usually think of those as the villains, and again, bad stereotyping. They could be the heroes, but
Right,
why did
yeah.
you choose that as you kind of the basis for your protagonist?
So really, like, I feel like necromancy always got not a bad rap. That's not the right word. I mean, it definitely has, but I kind of wanted that, but
Yeah.
I feel like necromancy was never really treated the way it's supposed to be. Like, so for
Mhm.
one, I'm a huge D&D nerd. I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons and usually as the dungeon master, so the guy who's creating the adventures for all the players to go on. So usually I end up playing the necromancer bad guy that all the players have to go up against and, things like that.
But
And so I've, in almost every book I've read, whether it's, a fantasy book or, Dungeons and Dragons role playing game book or, whatever else, it's like the players come and they fight the necromancer and they fight his minions one at a time and then they finally get to him and then he's like surprised to see them, but I would think it would be more like a hive mind, like you attack an ant colony and then all the ants know
oh,
you're there. And so I've always kind of like wondered, what it would be like if necromancy actually got portrayed in an intelligent way, and from the perspective of the person actually doing it rather than like someone else, fighting the necromancer. So yeah, a lot of it was just the magic system. I've always thought, stories with in-depth magic systems like Brandon Sanderson and Mistborn are really awesome. And so I really wanted to give a hard magic system for necromancy and show what it would be like to be aware of like 30 different zombies at once and seeing little pieces of what they see and things like that.
oh, that's fun. I like that. I've yet to read your book, so I'm bad. I'm sorry about that. It is on my to TBR list, and I'm pretty sure I put it on my actual wish list part of the TBR, but it is on my TBR list. I just think it's fascinating. One of my and
No,
yes,
no
one of
pressure at
one
all.
of
Let me
my
just say that. No pressure at all because I have a huge TBR list. I was actually
oh
looking
yeah,
at
it
your
never ends.
books and I want to talk with you a little bit later to figure out a good one to start with, and I'll add that to my TBR list too.
Again, no pressure. But yeah, I think that's really cool what you've been doing because and I did choose it to be an antagonist, but I have a lich. So for people who
Oh,
don't know,
nice.
that is a terminology for I guess the basic idea is a resurrected necromancer character. And so for me it's been kind of fun learning a little bit more of that kind of mythos in various levels. Now I've roughly played a little bit of D&D in my life. I'm more fascinated with the background matter of it, I found out, than the
Yeah.
actual gameplay. And I think it's because as a writer, because I'm always writing and creating characters, that's more like work to me. My husband, on the other hand, he loves it. He's obsessed about it. He always is telling me trivia about D&D. And so he's the reason why I created those little custom characters for that kind of physical play. But I the whole D&D literature, which I don't know if you cater Malthus as a D&D lit, because I know that's a newish
Yeah.
subgenre. That's one I think I want to break into down the line and have an anti-hero story, because I really do like dark fantasy. So, and I think that kind of basis of a rich magic system, of rich world development, is great, especially when you get some of the more gritty stuff. That's
Right.
just
Yeah. Um,
so. Question that popped up and says, for both of us, saying how many drafts did we write for our books? I will let
that's a
you go.
good question. So for me, I think that like, I think that for one, everyone's writing process is an evolving thing. Like I'm noticing now that I'm starting on the second book and working on that, even the whole like whether you're a plotter or a pantser, I think kind of evolves and, my writing style evolves. And so what I have done, and I think this has helped me a lot and might help some of the people who have writer's block, is I am way more forgiving in my first draft when I first write. Like it's almost like not even, something I would, definitely ever let anybody read. And it wouldn't really even make sense. Like a lot of the times, like I'll write a sentence and then instead of being stuck on like, because a lot of times you'll get to like three different words and you're like, all right, which word is the best word of these three? And then you'll just sit there for 10 minutes and, finally, all right, this one,
Yep.
instead I'll just write all three of those with like,
I do that
slashes
too.
or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, or put like something in parentheses I want to like come back and finish later. So I have like a super rough draft. Then I go through it and pretty it up, and then I read through it again, and then I will like be like, okay, now I need to make sure I have all the character motivation and inner thoughts in there. And then I go back and maybe now I need to, pretty up the descriptions here and there. So I think it's kind of less draft and more like layers for me
Mhm.
now, if that makes sense.
Oh
As
yeah,
a
that makes
long
complete.
rambling explanation.
Oh no, I read most of my minor rambling explanations, so here we go. But yes, no, and that's one of those things is when you write your first book, you're still figuring out the process, and it takes a couple times before everything smooths out because you write faster, you now know the process, you know who to work with, and you know a little bit of how you work better, and so that all helps and can tighten up how many times you do a draft in this sense, but for me, yeah, I still do a lot of drafts. This the preliminary one where kind of like you want to put the words on paper, you want to tell the story, and you have to allow yourself the opportunity and just the that it doesn't have to be perfect. Sorry, that's the way I want to approach it. Yeah, it doesn't have
Right.
to be
Yeah.
perfect the first time. And make notes, make side notes, whatever you need to, because you're going to go back multiple times, no matter what, many
Yeah,
times.
exactly.
And like for me, like I'll go through it a number of times, send it to a beta reader or beta readers. They'll send it back, and then I have to do those edits before it goes to an editor and comes back, and then I have to do a polishing round or two. So it takes a lot. Writing the book is the first thing. Get the words on paper. The editing is going to be a lot longer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, and then, yeah, and that's just talking about, our own process. And then, like you said, once you go to an editor and then there's cutting
Mhm.
it, trimming parts down and that's another thing too, is I think a lot of people, especially during like NaNoWriMo, and I guess that makes sense during November. I bring that up because it's coming up, but people get so fixated on word count and, how many words am I doing today? I didn't do as many today as I did yesterday. And really, once you get to a certain point in the book, like once I'm at that last stage of editing, or, working with my copy or line editor to really strengthen my words, like I'm seeing how many words I can cut out, rather than add. And it's, yeah. So, anyways, I think people fixate on word count too much. And then a lot of the times they inflate their word count with really bad writing that you're
Mhm.
really just going to cut out at the end anyway. So focus on just putting words on the paper each day, not how many it is.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to track, but yeah, for me, I've never done NaNoWriMo. I don't think I can foresee myself doing it because there is so much pressure and that and being competitive. I don't want to, if I'm going to spend time writing, I want to make sure at least it's some level of quality and so
Yeah,
some level of thought out and not in a panic of just putting stuff on paper. But that's just the way I approach it. Other people, they need that level of motivation to finish a project. But I don't mind tracking how many words I do a day and, doing maybe a challenge here, but also understanding life gets in the way.
yeah,
Don't stress
exactly.
about it too much. The editing's gonna come at some point, and that does play into effect. But yeah, no, it's an interesting process, and putting words on paper is like the most important thing from the get go.
Yeah,
And then polish it
I
later.
agree completely. Like I feel like if you take, at least for me, I there's definitely some momentum that's there. And even if it's just 100 words a day, even if it's just sitting down and not necessarily working on the book proper and just kind of working on world building and some of
Mm-hmm.
the other kind of
Other
periphery
very
stuff.
important things.
Yeah, I feel like at least for me, I have to work on it every day, or at least maybe not take more than like a day or two break, or else I just lose so much momentum. It's hard to kind of get back to that.
Yeah, I like to take breaks on the weekends because I'm a full time author and artist, and so I need those breaks to refresh. But then during the
Yeah.
weekdays, I'm pretty structured on how I do stuff, and that helps me kind of keep accountable. Now, I see we have a lot of chatter, so I'm going to try to skim through and see if any of them are questions. I did see a comment saying my main character is a journalist. Maybe I should have a more exciting character. You can make a journalist be very fascinating. I don't know what the story is, but I can foresee a journalist being very, very fascinating. It's just, how you slant it. And there's someone else talking a little bit more in different kind of fun ways to slant the journalist, skimming through, sorry. And one of the reasons why I read this aloud is because if this platform allows me, I'll repurpose this on YouTube later. And the comments below don't come with me.
I gotcha.
But I
Um,
always tag your information as well. I'm just skimming.
I'm looking
Let's
for a
see.
book. I have a book
Go for it.
recommendations because
Go for it.
someone was talking about
Man,
character. Um,
catching up, catching up. Yes, consider
well, I
doing
can't
that.
find it, but I have a really great book. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, no, no. I
Uh,
was just mentioning that someone was saying they don't do NaNoWriMo, but that's fine. You don't have to do it. And one cool thing, and then I'll get back to what you were saying. One cool thing about NaNoWriMo, which I didn't realize, the platform, you can always, at any time throughout the year, put in a project and challenge yourself for whatever, however long or whatever, and it can be just a way to motivate yourself, and you don't have to participate in the official month of NaNoWriMo for that purpose that everybody else is doing, which I thought was really kind of neat because I did not know that. Just a way
still
to
have to
keep.
come up with the silly word for it though.
Yes. But yes, you were saying that you had a book recommendation.
Yeah, so I can't find it now, and I actually got the book recommended from another author on TikTok, but there's a book called Story Genius by
Hmm.
Lisa Cron. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, if it's Crone or Cron, it's Cron. That's probably one of the best books I've read on character and really understanding, and I didn't read this before I wrote the first book. I'm glad I read it before I'm, really diving into working on my second one, but it really has a very great blueprint for coming up with your character's arc throughout the story and
Love that.
giving them a three-dimensional, presence on the page.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And it's always interesting and for authors because no matter what stage you're at, always try to challenge yourself to improve your craft and never
Yeah.
assume you know it all because that's where you go wrong. But yeah, that's one of those things is I'm trying to be better about keeping a sticky note when I do these lives because I always learn stuff and get like great recommendations for any kind of stage of the story. But I love learning about that. And for me, what the hardest thing is actually not the writing of the story, it is the marketing and advertising, everything that happens
Yeah.
after. So how are you feeling that you're handling all that, because your book's now been out for a couple months, 3 months,
Yeah.
4 months,
So,
4 months almost?
um, first, just to answer Cave Johnson's question, it's Cron, Lisa Cron, Cron, and it's called Story Genius is the name of the book. But yeah, so for marketing, I am still learning. I have, I hate to say it, but I've spent more money in marketing, I think, than I've gotten back in the book. I I have learned it, watched several videos on my own, and I have talked to a marketing person initially. And from what I've learned so far, if you are going to pay for ads, to me right now, it seems like Facebook has the most bang for the buck.
Hmm.
And if you are going to do that, what you need to do is make sure that you are tracking everything really, and making sure you're not just wasting money. And the best way to do that is with Amazon attribution links. So once you have your book published and you get all set up in Kindle Direct Publishing with Amazon, it has a like UI there where you can look at your books. It has reports where you can see how many books you've sold, things like that. And then there's another tab called marketing. And then when you click that, it takes you to this whole other separate UI from the one you start in. And when you go on there, that's where you can go and set up like Amazon ads if you want to run those. And from my
Hmm.
personal experience, I found that Facebook ads seem to perform better than Amazon ads for me.
Yeah.
But that could be everyone's experience. But when you're on marketing, whether or not you're using Amazon ads, there's a part on there called attribution links towards the bottom. And it would probably be a whole other, I know there's some YouTube videos and stuff on there to go figure out how to set it up. But basically, you create these attribution links, and then it gives you a URL that lets you track you know actions on your book. So for example, if I have two different ad images I want to use on Facebook, I create two different Amazon attribution links for both of those. Then when I create the ad on Facebook, instead of just putting my URL to directly to my book on Amazon,
Hmm.
I use that attribution link. And that way, I have, because if you run your ads on Facebook, then you can see all your marketing information on Facebook and how many people are clicking your ad on Facebook to go to Amazon. But then that's where it cuts off. So then if you have the attribution links, you can see, okay, out of the people that are clicking on that ad from Facebook and going to Amazon, how many people are actually buying the book, what their K and what your, pages read are for each ad. And
Hmm.
then, you can compare them and see, okay, well, running ads on Instagram, definitely isn't getting as much attention as Facebook, things like that. So
There's a
I would
lot.
say, yeah, it is a lot, but I would say if you get into running any ads whatsoever, and it doesn't even have to be ads. Like the interesting thing, the kind of cool thing is you can set these up and put it on like a link on your website, for example, and then you can see how many people are going to your website and then buying your book. Like, so you don't have to run ads to use these, which is kind of cool, but you do have to have your KDP account set up.
Yes. And I think if you are an indie author, um, most everybody utilizes KDP. I'm not saying everybody does, but most everybody uses that some way, and you don't have to be on Kindle Unlimited to be a KDP author. But, if you're going to publish, direct on Amazon, it's a great, it gives you the best cut of your money at this point in time.
Yeah.
Unless you're selling truly direct. But, but yeah, no, it is very interesting, and the advertising thing
Uh-oh.
is always evolving and
Am I still
changing.
here? It looks like it
Yeah,
froze up a little bit on my end.
you're I can hear you. You are kind of glitching a little bit, but it could be my end, your end. I don't know. You're still here. But let me ask you
Okay.
actually. So you got the advertising, and Yeah, that's a whole, not a can of worms, but that's a whole thing that is a very different kind of mindset than it is for writing the book. So, what is your favorite aspect of the author process? Is it, you know, the actual publishing, having it in hand? Is it the joy you get from the writing? Is it, the interactions you get from the readers? What is your favorite thing of being a now published author?
It's uh I would say it's the interactions with the people and the readers that are enjoying my book. Like that's one thing that's really cool is I've gotten emails and contacted from people from Norway and Poland and all these other countries around the world, like telling me that they bought my book or showing me pictures of it, and that's really really awesome.
That
That's
is
probably my
amazing.
favorite part. But one thing I will say that I miss, from not having published a book is like I guess I took for granted before, you publish a book, how much time you have to just focus on writing and writing your book. But once you publish it, now you're starting to work on book two, but you're
Mhm.
also trying to keep up all your social media stuff. You're trying to
Yes, it
market
gets
your first
complicated.
book. And so you don't get to give as much attention to book two as you did with book
Yeah,
one or anything like
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it is. It's a balancing act. And the more you write, and depending on, how much focus you can, because many writers, especially indie authors, are part-time. This is a
Yeah.
full-time job they squeeze into the hours after another full-time job. And it gets really complicated when you're trying to balance all the facets you need to do to be an author and have some kind of level of success. And everybody's terminology for what success is differs, but yeah, being able to kind of get the communicate and hear from readers and their feedback, and especially when you have someone who becomes like those super fans, it is such a fun feeling.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I'm sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say I want to circle back on marketing too because I we talked about money and especially because we're all indie authors, not a lot of us have access to run paid ads. So I also wanted to give a free marketing strategy that has also helped me, I think, and still continues to. So my novel is obviously costs money to
Mm-hmm.
buy, to download, to read. But I also have a prequel short story
Oh
called,
yes.
yeah, called Greedy as a Ghoul. And, as you can see, it's just a short story compared to
Yeah.
the novel. Um, but, obviously the printed version costs money, but I made the ebook free. And the cool part about that is, and this is one thing people mistake a lot. So when you hear about Amazon and the KDP program, you think, okay, well, if I'm part of that, my book has to only be on Amazon and is exclusive to Amazon for the ebook, which is true, but it's per KDP is per book, not per account.
Yes.
So my book Malthus is the ebook is exclusive to Amazon, so it can be in the KDP program, but the ebook for Greedy as a Ghoul is not. So I have this. I use Draft Two Digital, which is a website, but I use that to upload Greedy as a Ghoul to pretty much every website out there, from Amazon to Barnes and Noble to Apple Books. And then the important thing is, you have a short. So I have a prequel short story, and it's free. And then at the end of it, you make a call to action. If you
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed this, the novel will be coming out. You can find out more on my website. And then in the ebook, you can do what we just talked about and make an Amazon attribution link, especially if you already have your book published or are ready to publish it. And you can also go back and update it, the ebook files afterwards. But anyways, you make a free short story and then you put a link to your website or the other book you have coming out. And, I mean, even today, like I am still getting downloads of Greedy as a Ghoul, and a certain amount of the people who get this book for free will then come back and download Malthus. So if
I
you
love
have
it.
a short story, then you can make it free and get some make a reader hook, a reader magnet, or something like that is what
Yes,
the
yes.
marketing term is. There we go.
Hook them early. I love it. I'll get back to that in one moment. I did see a question that's asked us a little bit ago, and I promise I am paying attention. And says, do either of us look at our reviews of the books?
I definitely do. So I know that there is there's kind of a stigma, taboo, I don't know the right word, about authors and reader spaces and reviews being for readers. And I agree that that is true in a lot of cases. And sometimes you can read a review and see that it's clearly written for other readers, but sometimes you can read a review and it's almost like they're trying to write to the author, directly. And so I like Goodreads, even though my account is bugged for some reason. Like, I guess it's enforcing the separation because on Goodreads, like for some reason, people will leave reviews and I can go and I can like it, but then when try to add a comment, I have to try like 3 times before it finally sticks and takes. But every now and then, I'll kind of comment on somebody's review, and I check on them on Amazon every now and then. But, I guess the important part is not to let anybody's reviews affect you and not to definitely don't try to write anybody back. And, if they do leave a negative review, I wouldn't even write them back honestly to say, thank you for the review. I appreciate it. Like, just leave it. It's probably not really for you. And if is some information in there that you think might make your next book better, then take that for what it is and walk away from it.
Yeah, and that's my thing is like, look at it from like a critique. And that's, the thing about reviews is there is things, yes, you can learn from them to an extent, but yes, don't take the majority too seriously.
Yeah.
Everybody has their cup of tea, their favorite tastes of books and genres and subgenres. People have good days and bad days or whatever. Something sets one person off and another person absolutely loves it. Everybody's different. So your book's never going to please everybody. And when you're looking at reviews, look for trends is my thing. Is if you hear everybody's like, oh, I
Hmm.
love this one character, it's very dimensional, I love this quirk about him, then you're like, okay, that's good. If you have a bunch of people being like, not, there's like this kind of loophole you haven't like filled, and I'm trying to figure this out, then maybe that's something you want to like look back, think about, is that something you can alter in a future book? Do you want to like go back and tweak your book, which you can if you're indie? Those things, look for the greater trends versus the one individual that just reams your book for whatever reason. And I bring this one up a lot because I think it's hysterical, but I think it was I don't know if it was a 2-star or 3-star review. And it was a person, if you read it, it was like, love the book, love the book, love the book, love the book, love the book. And then the last line was, this book was not a standalone, so I'm giving it this review, the star rating, even though the cover and everything said it's a book 1 of a series. So it's
Yeah.
like, you can't please everyone, and you're going to get something. You just have to like shrug it off and be like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a
Sorry.
good point about the trends too. Like, so one thing that I've noticed from Malthus is that both I honestly didn't get a whole lot of negative reviews. I think I got one or two 3-star reviews where someone, kind of wrote something. But with both the more critical reviews and the positive reviews, the trend I saw was that people wanted to know a lot more about Malthus's past. So I'm
Mhm.
definitely taking that on book 2 and gonna have some
That's
interlude
cool.
chapters with that and everything. So yeah, you can definitely learn a lot from them as long as you don't let the critical reviews affect
Yes, and I do see a couple comments from someone else talking about their writing process and saying that they write some things some nights and then come back and don't really think it's that good. It happens. I've had time where I feel like I'm a genius, write something on paper, come back and be like, ooh, that that needs work. And then there's other times where I'll write something and then be thinking about it, I'm like, man, I'm not sure it fits together, and give it a couple weeks, come back to it, and all of a sudden I'm like, no, actually, that wasn't bad.
you. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I could, if somebody gave me the opportunity to go back in time, I could probably pick 20 different parts of my book and, that I would want to change and rewrite now. But I mean, you would spend forever doing that. So, we mentioned earlier in the video that it's important to just put words on paper, and I think that's the most important part. You can fix the bad parts with editing, but you spend too much time going back and fixing the same part over and over, then that'll take away from the whole book.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I have actually, as I'll mention about Audible, so that makes me think, do you have your book? Have you broached the audiobook bracket yet? 'Cause-
I really lucked out with the whole audiobook thing. So Malthus is a really interesting story, and I won't spend too much time on it because it could probably be a 40-minute part just on this. But I started actually publishing a few chapters of Malthus on Royal Road, which is a website kind of like Wattpad or some of those
oh,
other ones
fun.
where, yeah. And so I started actually doing that with Malthus, and it really took off on Royal Road. Like I lucked out, and it actually made it in the top 50. Like when the first 8 or 9
Ooh.
chapters were published, it made it in the top 50 on the whole website. And someone from Tantor Audio noticed it, I guess, and sent me an email and asked if I wanted an audiobook contract. And
Ooh, that's
it
exciting.
it went to my junk mail folder, and I thought it was a scam at first. And it was really cool. I mean, it's every author's dream, but at the same time, I had only made it halfway through the book. And
Mhm.
so it put a lot of pressure on, okay, I don't even know I'm going to finish this book, and they
Yeah.
want to give me an audiobook contract and all this stuff. Long story short, I, finished the book. I did get an audiobook contract. The person who recorded the book, it was actually really cool because I got to listen to like a few different samples of narrators and, pick one. And the person who recorded the book actually is on IMDb. Like his name is Lee Osorio, and he's had a few
Ooh,
roles on NCIS and True Detective, like
so
some kind of
fun.
stand-in roles. And he did such an amazing job. He did. My favorite character is this army colonel named Colonel Peshka in the book, and he does this kind of like half Foghorn Leghorn, half General Patton voice for him, and it's really, really amazing. So, anyways, all that to say, I did get an audiobook. It was really awesome. And the coolest part was actually like listening to it at the end because it's like you get to re-experience your whole story again.
And it comes alive. Oh, that's so much fun. Yeah, I got into
Yeah.
starting to catch up with audiobooks last yeah, I think it was like last year, really getting into releasing them. So it's a fun process, and it is so neat to hear your books and your characters come alive. And
Yeah.
I've kind of, with my different series, tested out different things to see what people like. Because I actually, I'll admit, didn't really listen to audio until this process, and I'm kind of questioning to myself why I hadn't done that before. But yeah, it is such a fun thing, and um, it is always, like I said, just always neat. It's like holding your book for the first time, but listening to
Yeah.
your characters for the first time is still that such a neat feeling.
It really is really cool.
And I see a couple other questions popping up. I love questions. We have a very chatty crowd, and that is fantastic. I have one that
Cool.
says,
Yeah.
when or how do you decide a book should have sequels or not sequels, or when do you do more than one book to tell a whole story?
Um, I I knew that Malthus was going to be more than one book. And the interesting thing, and I'll try to say this the best I can without spoilers, is my book Malthus, it is a fantasy novel and it does take place in this giant, epic fantasy world, but the story itself, the first book, actually is a tiny, it takes place in like a 2 to 3 day period in like one spot.
Ooh,
So, in the next books, I'm going to explore the whole
mhm,
world, but
fun.
I don't know. I knew from the beginning it was definitely going to be more than one book. And I know everybody seems to write trilogies, but I just have this feeling that my series is going to be four books. I think
Well,
that's
my
going to be
first
what,
series
what
was
it
four
takes.
books, so
Okay, cool. A
I guess,
quadrilogy.
yes.
Quadrology.
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
I like writing series, and I definitely like writing longer and longer series as I go through, for better or for worse, I don't know. But yeah, for me, it's the stories have to kind of tell themselves. And that's just the way I write. And so I know pretty early on, usually, how many, if the book's a series, how many are going to be in it. A lot of the main characters and the highlights of points. The exception was my first book, the one in the blue over here. I thought it
Yeah.
was supposed to be a standalone because it was meant to be a standalone, meant to be a tester book before I got into one of the series that I was my passion project. And I ended up realizing towards the end it was actually a 4-book series, and so I got stuck on that one for a long time, but it was a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun to write a series. And you can decide at any point, you can know from the get-go, you could be finishing up a book and then realize right when you hit print and publish and that it actually has others. It doesn't matter when you decide, it just has to be right for you and your story. With a note, if you are trying to publish traditional, a lot of trad people prefer standalones with an option, side note, that it could potentially be stretched into a series because they may opt only for the standalone. They may want the series in the long term, but if you're trying to publish trad, be careful. They're usually hesitant when someone pitches a series straight up, and just to know. I didn't know that until I got in the whole publishing process, but it's interesting.
And
Another
so that
question.
actually, I
Oh,
saw
yes,
another question down there. So let's get him, Cave Johnson first. But I got a question for you
go for
after
it.
this.
Well, I will let you read because funny thing, I think who joins on whose tab, I may not see all the questions. So if you see
Oh,
anything,
okay.
always feel free to shout out. And I forgot to let you know that earlier. So if I'm missing any, it may be because I can't see them.
So Cave Johnson's asking or saying my main character isn't going to survive. Will that make people angry? Um, I think that you will make people angry if it is something kind of corny where you make them not survive, but then bring them back in a second book. So you have to be careful with that. Like if unless you have a cool, kind of unique way to bring them back, I think that the kind of resurrection cliche, especially for main characters, can upset readers, because it dampens the effect of actual deaths in the story. But if
Yeah.
it's well written, and you could continue the story with a different main character, then I think that could be a great idea to hook people.
Yeah, and then also depending on how you write the story, if you have just a single main character and you're only following the one that will unalive later, that is actually an interesting way to approach it, and then jumping to what maybe one of the other side characters going to the next book or whatnot. But if you're doing one of those multiple points of view, I have had people that have had general main characters in a large cast, and all of a sudden, whoopsies, the character that everybody likes isn't around anymore. Game of Thrones is a case in point, but I have other friends on here that have some characters that people fell in love with in the first book, and then you get kind of even 3/4 of the way through, and you're like, oh, you took them away from me. Why did you do that?
Yeah, I won't say any spoilers for Malthus, but it's obviously a book with necromancy, and there's definitely a lot of deaths throughout the book. So yeah, and there are a lot of characters who, Malthus is obviously the main character, but there are a lot of
Mm-hmm.
characters in there where you're like, oh, 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 yeah, they died.
No, I do like that. I think that's one of those. I don't know. Maybe it's the evil author of me, but like when I do write my dark stuff, I'm okay with unaliving a character or
Yeah,
multiple. A
especially
difference
with
in my brighter side, but the dark side, it comes out. It's just like, I'm sorry, here's the tissue box. I actually told one of the authors that if because we both wrote dark stuff, and I was like, if you ever do a book box, promo box, or whatnot, you should send those little to go tissues in with the box and be like, be
that
prepared,
would be funny. That would be funny.
be prepared.
Yeah, I especially with necromancy, I really wanted one thing that was important to my story is I really wanted like the zombies and okay, so the story basically takes place at a fort under siege, soldiers fort under siege,
Mm.
and the necromancer has to help the soldiers under siege, basically. So obviously, a lot of the zombies will end up being some of the fallen soldiers and things like that. And I wanted to give that meaning instead of them, like The Walking Dead or 28 Days Later, everything else, just kind of these mindless drones of zombies. which is cool and adds to the atmosphere, but I wanted them to actually have meaning. Oh, these were actually people that used to be alive, and,
Yeah.
kind of have that sink in more.
Oh yeah, I like that. Now we've hit the 3/4 mark, the quarter mark. So I do want to make sure I ask a couple questions before I get
Okay.
lost in these other questions that are popping up. But one of them is, and this is again important when if this platform allows me to repost, um, where can people find you? So obviously you're on Book Talk.
hmm
Do you have a website? Do you have a newsletter? What other platforms do you hub on? Let me know.
Okay, so I was pretty lucky that I was able to get my name, Casey Sutton, Writes, as my username for pretty much everything. So all one word, Casey Sutton Writes. That's my website, CaseySuttonWrites.com. It's my TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram of Casey Sutton Writes. So you could
Make it
find me
simple.
there. My books are on Amazon. My ebook for Malthus is on Amazon. The audiobook's on Amazon, as well as the hardcover and paperback. But I also have on my website a link to Shopify where you can get
Hmm.
some cool sprayed edges of my book that I've
Love
done,
it. I
that
need to
I've
learn
also
how to do that.
signed.
Cool.
What's that?
I said I need to
Yeah,
learn
that's
how to do
cool.
sprayed edges. Oh, that's so cool.
And so one thing cool I'll show off too is there
Yes.
are some illustrations inside my book. I worked with this
Mm.
really awesome artist from Serbia, actually named Dion Delic, and he did some really cool
Ooh, I love
illustrations
it.
for my book. So I've got
Beautiful.
like 12 different pictures in there that go with the book and a world map
Oh,
and stuff. But yeah, so CaseySuttonWrites.com and Casey Sutton Writes for all my social stuff.
that's so cool. I love that. Um,
See
I
you, Cave Johnson.
I have not. Oh no, I actually my first book series I do have a map, and it was one that I drew from back in the day. Um, embed in there, but I haven't actually jumped to the part of trying to embed images and like art and stuff like that. So does that make it that much more complicated publishing? I mean, it looks gorgeous, but I just don't
It
know.
it is, and so I do have a few TikTok videos about it, and I need to
Oh,
make
that's
some
cool.
more because it is a pretty in-depth topic. But I have found a program called Atticus. I know there's two main
Oh
programs
yeah,
out there
yeah.
for book formatting. There's Atticus and Vellum, I think. Atticus is one of the best purchases for software I've made as a writer. It was like $100,
Yeah.
and it lets you format your book in pretty much everything. It is a little bit tricky, and in order to do especially like map images, because what you're basically doing is getting one image and then
Mhm.
putting it in, cutting it into two and putting it onto two pages.
Mhm.
So there's some programs to do that. But once you do that, you have to select full bleed on both your book formatting program like Atticus, and then when you upload it to Amazon, you also have to pick full bleed. And that means that it doesn't have borders around the image when you upload it.
Mhm.
And doing that basically is how to get it there.
That's cool.
Excuse
I
me.
love learning things. Okay, that is so cool. I
Yeah.
I do. I love learning things. It was like one of the big achievements this year because I was doing some testing out new things. Kickstarter being one of them. I launched a beta version of a bookshop function on my website because I did decide to pull out of Kindle Unlimited. Books are still in Kindle, but I pulled out of
Yeah.
Kindle Unlimited. But one of the options is now allows me to will be able to sell ebooks directly from my website and stuff like that, which would be kind of fun and distribute wide, which we'll see how that goes. Testing, I'm always trying to learn and test things, but you never know. And the best thing is, if something doesn't work, you can go back to go back to what was better.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
Um, I was going to ask you actually how I was really impressed. How do you write so much and so many books, and how long have you been writing? Because I am a slow reader and a very slow writer, and I'm just impressed with how many books that you put out. I think that's awesome.
well, it's an illusion because the whole bottom row series are novellas, so they are a lot shorter
Okay,
than you think. So that
okay.
it's an illusion, and it makes me feel better because I look at it, I'm like, look, I wrote so many things. It's really an illusion. But yeah, no, I've been published since 2016. But just
Okay.
as I've mentioned in kind of the earlier on in this is the more I've worked on the craft and everything, and the more I've networked and figured out my process, everything has gotten faster and faster and faster. Both my writing and how I structure my time and everything is more efficient, which I love
Yeah.
efficiency.
Yeah.
So my first book took 10 years from, the coming up with the idea to publication for those for college. Um, but finally got that one out, and compared to what it looks like in a year, I release one full length because I have two series simultaneously. Do not advise that. One full length and four novellas a year, and hardcover, paperback, ebook, and then audiobooks come out whenever they can. So they're all over the
Yeah.
place. But it looks like a lot. But again, novellas, so it's almost like only two books. It just looks like it.
That's still really cool. Like I think it would. I'm probably a maybe year and a half, 2 year a book person. I'm thinking at my
Hey,
current pace.
that's fine, and that's what everybody has to like figure out what works for them and pace them. Again, some people work full time as authors, other people have a full time job and are parents and are writers and have other projects, and you just have to do whatever time wise. And don't stress if you look at someone who, because I participated in a conference and was on a panel with a bigger name author, and she straight up said from the get go, she's like, I put out a new book a month, every month,
Oh my
on the dot,
gosh.
first of the month, every month. And everybody's just like, what? But the thing is, behind the scenes, you find out a little later that she has 15 full time staff under her. She's such a big
Dang.
business that everything is, all she does is write. She doesn't have to work about marketing. She doesn't have any other job. That is her job, and that's all she does. So she can turn a book a month because she has it down to a formula, and that's great. I'm not there.
Yeah. Yeah, and as a self-published author, I mean, it really is like the one person band
Hmm.
thing where you have like the drum and all that stuff, like, from marketing to formatting to making a website and all that stuff. And I mean, it's a lot to do as a self-published author. And I mean, really, I think for any author starting out, even authors lucky enough to get an agent in a traditionally
Hmm.
published, I think you're really still doing a lot of the stuff on your own
Oh
nowadays.
yeah. Oh yeah, and a lot of socials are pretty much all on us. It doesn't matter if you are a trad published by one of the big houses or someone who's indie. You still have to do a lot of the kind of marketing yourself too, because that's kind of how you read and reach and communicate with people. For me, one of the best things is repurposing content.
Yeah.
I have a whole cycle, and I don't mind saying it. Like, I will film a video here. A couple weeks later, you'll see it on Instagram. A couple weeks later, it'll be on my Facebook group, and then it'll funnel to my page, and then it'll funnel to like Twitter or whatever. But like, it makes my life easier, so I don't have to come up with 1,000 things on 1,000 platforms and forget that I'm supposed to be a writer.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm still learning to juggle a bit, and life has gotten crazy over the last couple of months. So I'm kind of like just now getting back into trying to update social media and everything, but yeah, I really need to. So one thing I have found that's helped me is I am using CapCut to record a lot of my videos there because I can
Yeah.
record and edit a lot of stuff there and not do it inside TikTok because then that's when it puts the watermark and makes it harder to upload to everything
Mm.
else. So if you do it on CapCut, you can, make your video like 90% there, then make like 10% of the changes and Instagram and Facebook and TikTok because you don't have all the same music and all of them and stuff like that.
That's
But yeah, I feel like that's helped me a lot because unfortunately, if you make your video in TikTok and upload it here, then if you download it and re-upload it somewhere else, it puts those watermarks on it, and then at least I have noticed that Facebook and Instagram and everything else like picks up on that, and then those videos for me get like 50 views compared to a few hundred
yeah.
without the watermarks.
And there are apps, and I use one that will take the watermarks off for you. They've just forced you to watch the weirdest ads if you're on the free version. And my as an author, every penny is worth something. So I will just I'll upload a video and let the ad play and then be like, oh, you're done, okay, download it. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it is, and those are smart tricks of, yes, repurposing, but finding those, it's not really loopholes, but workarounds for some of the things that do suppress on one side. And, if you can figure those workarounds will help you maximize the potential of things, which I
Yeah.
love. I like being as lazy as possible in a workaholic society.
I mean, it's really all about time. Like you just have so much time in the day and you want to update your social medias and stuff and everything, but then you want to write too, and then you have all the other responsibilities you talked about. So if you can find a more efficient way to update social media so you have more time to write, then that's what you're trying to do.
So let me ask, since I've been staring at your shirt, which obviously is your book cover and it's fast. I'm assuming, wait, actually two questions then. One, is that on your Shopify aspect? Can people get your
Um,
shirt?
I I need to go and create the link. So my friend, his name or handle is Beard of Darkness. He does some really awesome book reviews, and his
Yeah.
wife, she creates a lot of the T-shirts and designs. And I feel horrible because I can't remember the name of her handle for her shop, but she's actually the one who makes the shirts. And I have a link, I think, on my TikTok, but I don't have the link on my website yet. I need to go and another one of those time things, go and update my website and put that on there. But yeah, she has the shirts and she has all kinds of other really cool shirts and graphics too. So I'll have to put that link on
Fun.
there. Yeah.
Now, who designed your cover? Can I ask? Because
Ah.
I think it's really kind of
Um, I lucked out. So another, I know we're kind of running out of time here, but
it can bleed over a little
Reedsy.
bit.
Okay, cool. So reedsy.com, reedsy.com
Mm-hmm.
is a really cool website that's like Fiverr for authors, and you can
Mm-hmm.
find editors, cover artists, everything on there. And you can get some really awesome professionals. I worked with a guy named Alejandro Colucci, and he designed my cover, but he's actually designed like covers for The Witcher, for Anne Rice, for Joe
Mm-hmm.
Abercrombie, like some really, serious, heavy hitting authors. And honestly, I paid, I know it sounds like a lot, everything costs a lot of money, but I paid, I think it was right under $2,000. It was like $1,800 and I think that's a reasonable price for a cover. Looking around at other market prices, it's probably a little bit on the higher end, but that's working for someone who's worked with at least 8 or 9 instantly
Mm-hmm.
recognizable authors. So, I mean, how many people can say that for their first book? That's awesome.
And this is a
Um,
stunning cover.
yeah, so he did the covers, and then, like I said, that other guy, Dion Delic from Serbia, did the pictures inside. Let me show you one really cool one. Let me find my favorite one. It's a 2-page spread.
I think it's so much fun.
Yeah, here you go.
Ooh, pretty cool. Look at that. I love that.
Yeah, that's honestly that's one of my favorite parts of the book was working with him to do these pictures because I would send him like excerpts from the book, and then he would read it and like he'd like do the sketch of the picture and we'd adjust a few things and it was really cool working with him. That was probably one of my favorite parts of making the book.
That is neat. And I don't know if that's something that I'm always figuring how can the authors maximize stuff. And for me, it's now again with bookshops on the brain and bookish things. I wonder if you could come up with a collection set of little printed character, not character art, but scene art that you could have as an extra additive bundle for people if they wanted to have it mounted on a wall at some point or have framed or something.
That would be cool. Like honestly, I've thought about that too. Like I want to get a few of the images as like posters to put up in here, but yeah, there needs to be a better way to do it because so far everything I've looked at, like the websites where you can upload images and make T-shirts and posters and stuff. It seems like it's just so expensive just to do that through them that there would be no way to actually, me in turn to sell a T-shirt for like $30, to end up breaking even on it. But I definitely would like to do that. And I really like the idea of 3D printing stuff. My girlfriend's brother is huge into 3D printing, so it'd be cool to have him make some characters for me.
Yeah, that would be cool. There is it's called Hero Forge.
Yeah,
That
I know what you're talking about.
that's what I did
That's
for
cool.
my custom characters because you can like design a lot of things about them. So I just ordered them. Now, unfortunately, if I resell them, they're, not necessarily cheap and I don't make a lot off of it
Right.
because they were expensive in the first place. But it is just something fun and a little different as a option for people who want to enjoy the book and the characters in a different way. But yeah,
Yeah.
I like the idea. And like if you actually have the image and figure out how size, like you could go to when you're talking about your poster art, you could go to something like Office Depot and print out a few that way if you want to sell direct. Now,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing, but like if you were choosing to sell direct out of, your house with some stuff, you could have a few posters up there or whatnot and be able to sell
Yeah.
it that way. And it doesn't have to be terribly expensive, but again, time is money too and complexity of life.
Yeah. I have found that, and I don't know if I have any. Oh, I do have one nearby. I have found that printing out the smaller things in bulk is definitely affordable. So I got bookmarks,
I like that.
and you
Oh,
can
that's a
make your
cool
own.
QR code.
Yeah, you can make your own QR codes too. And so this was another kind of, not really free. Obviously, you have to pay for the bookmarks, but it was another kind of free marketing thing. Is I went to, and there's some videos on my profile, but I went to a Dungeons and Dragons gaming convention called Origins Game Fair, dressed up as Malthus, and handed these out. So then you have bookmarks
I
that
think I saw
have,
some of your videos from that.
yeah. So you have information about the book and then QR codes that take you directly to it. And I know I got at least 15 pre-orders from that, just doing that alone. So I mean,
That
you just
is
have to be
fun.
creative and think outside the box when you're marketing. Every little bit helps.
Oh, yes. Every little bit helps. Absolutely. But let me ask you, since we have rounded the hour, and, if anybody's watching and wants to chime in questions, feel free at this point. And for you, is there any topics that you would want to cover or any questions that you had that you didn't get a chance to answer or ask? So this is that time.
Okay. So I would say I would say I guess maybe this is less of a question and maybe something that we've already covered earlier in the conversation, but don't give up. Like just work on your book. Everybody has a book inside them. Just work on it every day, just a little bit. And you get writer's block, you get stuck on something, but there's so many different avenues, like especially with fantasy, with all the world building, or really any genre, because you have character building, you have all these different things. So if you can't work on the piece that you're working on now, the present part in the book, and you get stuck, then step away from it and work on character background, or step away from it and work on another chapter that will be in the book but is not the chronological order you're working on. And I feel like once you start doing that, then all of a sudden you have five different things that you can work on and make progress, when you get stuck on something. So I feel like that has really helped me with writer's block and has helped me make progress, every day.
That is fantastic. And that is a great thing to remind people because, yes, writing, and it could be, and maybe you write something that you don't really want to share with other people, but just to write can bring you so much joy. And don't let
Yeah.
other people's pressures get in your face. You have to do what's right by you and enjoy the process, enjoy your creation, and it's just a fun thing. I do see a question popping up. What companies are you looking at to provide direct sales links on your web pages? Well, there are different things you can do, and there's one. Obviously, if you have a website, you can send people directly to, if you're exclusive through Amazon, to Amazon, and as you were saying, you have like the not attribution links you could add on there to kind of also
Yeah.
help you track the information. You can do the same to Barnes and Noble if you're wide, or any of the other companies. For me, my website is through Wix, and they have a shop capability. It's a little harder to figure out than the regular aspect, I found out. I know I'm not very techy, so maybe it was just me. But they do have a lot of integrations if for whatever purpose you want. So if you want to sell out of your house and I have boxes and bins of different merch that I have here, and physical copies of authors' book copies that I can sign and send out for book boxes and stuff here, but that takes physical space. But they also have integrations now for Shopify or any of these, as we were
Yeah.
talking about, print demand sites. I think they have like a half dozen or more options that you could choose from if you wanted to integrate. They also have integrations now for other shop functions on socials, like the TikTok shop and stuff like that. So if you had one or want to build one, you can all sync it together. And they now, I think one of their newest features, and again, this is Wix, is direct sales, like point of sales is what they call. So if you went out to a convention or to a book signing, you could use their card swiper and it will sync up to your website. And so you're never overselling your physical copies because it's all in the same system. So that's something that I'm exploring right now. Again, in the beta version.
I'll have to check that out. I also have Wix and I'm using Shopify and I don't really have the integration set up very well. And I've done most all this stuff myself. I have an IT background, so I,
Ooh,
know enough to be
lucky.
dangerous, I guess. But I would also really recommend Wix and I'm using Shopify, but I'll have to look into that Wix point of sale thing, look into that some more.
Yeah, that was something that is very new for Wix. And if you're interested, they were very easy. They just, asked if I wanted to know more information. They scheduled a time, and they had two people on the phone with me talking about all their options for different devices if you wanted to do a physical point of sale. It's kind of like the version of Square, if you know the Square card readers, except it integrates with your website and whatever your catalogs are of your merchandise. And so that was really kind of neat. I haven't taken up that yet because I'm doing baby steps, very, very small, very small baby steps,
Um,
micro-sized, but
I
but
did
it's
think of
different.
one more. Oh, sorry. I did think of
Oh,
one
no
more
worries.
thing too. I wanted to bring up, and this might be like a 5 minute-ish conversation. Is it okay if we go
That's
over that
fine.
much? Okay. So I am not a tax professional, but or a legal expert. However, I think that one thing a lot of people are missing out on is that you can be employed, and file your taxes like you do every year, but you can also put a section on there, and TurboTax kind of guides you through it. But as an author, you can claim being a self-employed author as a tax deductible expense, and a lot of the things that you spend money on, whether it's your writing computer, whether it's your writing software like Atticus, whether it's Facebook advertisements, or even the prices for hiring an editor, all of those expenses for writing can be claimed as tax deductions. And a lot of people don't realize that, and you can help fund your writing career through some of this. I mean, it's not going to give you infinite money, of course, or anything, but it will at least make some of your expenses, at least get some money back on your expenses as a writer when you file your taxes. So
Yeah, and that's
at
that's
least
why.
go
Oh
ahead.
yeah, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say no. That's why I made sure I became an LLC right away, just because I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure and did kind of make myself a business entity. And I do, yeah, I track things. Now, not everything I track will pay off or I can write off, but it's things that anything that's business related, I do make notes of it. I file it separately and I look into it because theoretically, now I haven't done that yet because unfortunately I live in a small apartment and the capabilities don't work for me right now. But theoretically, if you have an office and it's just your work office, nothing else, I have a couch in here and it's kind of like a laid over room, so it doesn't work for me right now. But
Yeah.
if you have a true office where that is what you do, is your work, your business, you store your, author's copies, whatever. That's one of those potential write-offs that you can actually get some of, I think, some deduction for the electricity use once you calibrate how much one room, it's a lot of math, but then
I
theoretically you can actually,
This
write
is
off.
my tax deductible writing office right here.
Nice. See, you can do it. But yeah, that is a very good point. It's like, yeah, if you treat it as a business, there are some things that you can consider as a business.
Yeah,
But
definitely. Okay, that
yeah,
was the last writing tip I think I had.
I love it. I love it. And I'm sure you'll think of 1,000 more because there's so many. And we both are learning and we should be learning as we continue going forward. I know for me, I'm going to the 20 books 50K in Vegas because I want to learn more about advertising and marketing. I need to know more.
Awesome. We'll
But
make some tutorial videos once you come back. I want to see
I will try.
them.
I will do my best. But yeah, it's always good to try. Always challenge yourself to learn and engage and network with people. But as for tonight, I'm going to wrap up because I have heard my dog pacing out there, which probably means he needs to use his restroom because it's always like right around now, anyways.
Yeah.
But with that said, thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for everybody who's been listening. And at any point, if you ever want to do one of these, I do them weekly. I schedule them in advance, but I do them weekly. So you can always come
Okay.
back again in the future and we can just talk about more books.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on. I had a blast. It was really cool talking with you, and I will send you a message later because I want to talk with you and find out which book to start with.
Okay, perfect. And thank you for everybody. Have a lovely rest of your evening or afternoon or morning, wherever you are in the world. And until next time, everybody, bye, everyone.
See you later. Have a good one. Bye.